Hi folks, today we're going to talk a little bit more about the sense or the nonsense of the AFTMA system in fly fishing, the line classification for fly rods that has been made in the 1960s on the foundation of some wrong, in my opinion, assumptions, and I made an experiment to prove that. And in that experiment, I founded a rod company. Don't worry, I'm not selling you any rods here, don't worry. But the experiment goes like this. The Speycasting has designed rods without an AFTMA system. I want to show you this only quickly here. See this? There's no line classification on this rod. And the experiment goes like this. Very simple. You send this rod to someone and you say to that someone, a seasoned fly fisher by the way, you send that to a seasoned switch hand, double-handed fly rod person, and you say to him, here's a rod, you go ahead and you find out what line combination suits that rod. Now, I did that experiment with about a dozen people. I'm not showing you here the exact results of that experiment, but let me ask you the question, what would you expect as a result? Because this blank here has by industry standard this AFTMA rating on it. Now, if you give this rod to someone who is unbiased and you give him this rod and say, here, you come back to me with the preferred line weight you'd use on this rod. And the result is actually shocking out of these experiments. And I'm not giving you the exact data because it is too sensitive, but what happened, without exception, every person was rating that blank higher than the standard is. So what I'm saying is, every person was at least 4 grams. I don't know what this is in grain. Let me check this quickly. Now, 4 grams is at least 60 grain. Some people were even twice as heavy as the recommended line weight. So if there was a recommended line weight, say of 200 grain, they would use 400 grain and be happy with the rod then. Now, what does that tell you? What is the conclusion out of that systematic overlining of the Speycasting experiment that shows that very clearly? What is the result out of that experiment? The result is that everybody went higher in line weight than the recommended rod blank weight or the recommended weight by manufacturers. And that means, A, manufacturers have no clue. It means that this AFTMA standard is just that a stupid standard that nobody would adhere to if it wasn't there. And this is why, at first sight, you might think, how stupid is that? No line weight on the rod? But at a closer sight, you will notice, holy shit, there must be really something wrong with the whole system. Because a lot of anglers already do overline all their rods. If you talk to specialist anglers, many times you hear that, oh yeah, I use a line higher every time because I'm not casting far and I whatever reasons. So that systematic overlining means that people who overlined, who had heavier lines on, could gain a better feedback over the swing system. And that means, if you think that backwards, that the AFTMA system doesn't help the learner at all. And that is due to the fact that it has been made by people who can already cast, and probably, remember, in the history of fly casting, I told you when the double haul came up, 1937, in the mid-30s. By the time it was 1960, the specialists were all double hauling, and they were standing there and waiting in their lines with the double haul, and then they said, oh yeah, here, this is a 6-weight line with this and that grain rate, that forms the optimum tide loop, and they were double hauling away there, without having in mind that a learner, A, can't feel the rod very well, and B, can never do a double haul in order to bend that rod better. So the AFTMA system is, how can you say, tunnel vision. A top-down tunnel vision on things that is made by super specialists, only for super specialists and not for the learner. And that is the reason why if you give somebody a rod without AFTMA rating, they will line that rod in with a higher line weight than on the rating. Do me a favor, you can try this experiment by yourself by just taping off a rod and give it to your buddy and say to your buddy, here, come back to me what line weight is good for that rod. This experiment is repeatable, and I'm very, very confident that it will throw up the same results every time. I appreciate it if you'd support my work with a like and a subscribe. And if you want to support the Speynergy project, you'll find the homepage there too. I know it's not a great page, but I can't do all at the same time. Nevertheless, this sort of anti-AFTMA experiment, if you so want, shows crystal clear what is actually wrong in this business and what happens if you start having an unbiased view on things, and if you start zeroing yourself in without that AFTMA filter. That is, in my opinion, bad for the sport and the reason why so many people struggle casting, and the anti-AFTMA experiment does prove that very well. Again, thank you very much for watching. Like and subscribe to the channel, support the work. Go out and play a little bit with the tools of the positive reinforcement casting training. You find that in my other videos. And until then, tight lines, and please don't forget, we don't own the water owns us.